Hello and welcome to a very special instant reaction episode of the Field of 68 After Dark. And we are here at the Aria. We just watched 10 seed Arkansas pull off the first real upset of the NCAA tournament, Jeff. The first big upset, the first shocker. Number 2, St. John's goes down 75-66. Cal beats Pitino. But perhaps the biggest headline is that Jeff Goodman officially needs to send an apology, a formal written apology to John Calipari, who is on his way to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. 75-66. The Hogs have been called, Jeff.
I mean, obviously that was a huge win, Rob. Huge win, one that nobody really expected. You look at, again, St. John's, Rick Pitino. Everybody said he was the better coach. You're playing in Providence, kind of in St. John's backyard. All their fans are there. And what does John Calipari do as the underdog? He goes out and shocks really the college basketball world. And, he did it with a bunch of guys that, frankly, matched up well against the Johnnies. I mean, we've known all year they can't shoot the ball. They can't shoot it, whether it's from 3, whether it's from 8 feet, whether it's from the line, wherever it is. And as Rick Pitino tried to revamp this team from a year ago where it was kind of skill but not athletic, now it became athletic and not enough skill. But this was an unbelievable win for John Calipari against his former rival, Rick Pitino. They look like they like each other, but they don't. And ultimately, this is a win that gets people off Cal's back for a variety of reasons. One, what he had failed to do lately at Kentucky and what he had started to do this season at Arkansas, going 0-5 in the SEC. And, again, being on the bubble 2 weeks before the end of the season.
Yeah, it was exactly the kind of win that he needed. I think you're 100% correct about that. I think that there were valid criticisms that were made about Cal beforehand. Jeff, while we're doing this, take your phone off of the table. All we can hear is the buzzing every time you get a text message. Here's what I'll say about this, right? I think that this win for Arkansas says more about St. John's to me. The narratives are there for Cal, right? He has this team back in the Sweet 16, or he is back in the Sweet 16. He has a new job. If Kentucky loses to Illinois, which is very possible tomorrow, then he is going to advance farther than the team that just fired him. The team that was not sad to see him go is probably the better way to phrase that. And he is in the Sweet 16, right? All those narratives, all those storylines are awesome, and we'll talk about that plenty. To me, the story of this game was that St. John's finally ran into a team that had the same kind of length, same kind of athleticism, same kind of talent, same kind of physical gifts that they had.
Didn't I say that the other day, and everybody laughed at me that I thought they're as talented, if not more talented than St. John's? What do you really – I mean, they do. They do.
It's not – I don't know if talent is the right way that I would phrase it, right? But they are just as big and just as physical and just as athletic. And that is something where when St. John's ran into it and they weren't able to just physically overpower you in the paint and they weren't able to overwhelm you with what they do defensively, Arkansas was able to make it happen. And let's be honest, man, Cal didn't run a single thing in the second half. Like, they didn't run offense. What they did was they got the ball to DJ Wagner and they got the ball to Boogie Fland and they put them in ball screens and they said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set a ball screen for you. If you get a switch, you're going to attack that switch. If you don't get a switch, drive and get a paint touch. Jonas Adu is going to wedge out Zuby Ejiofor in the paint, and you're going to find a way to be able to get to the basket and get a layup because St. John's isn't helping off of the corners. And they just did that over and over and over again. And I think what we saw was beyond the foul trouble stuff, and we'll get to that in a second. What we saw was that St. John's bigger, more physical guards weren't able to deal with the quickness of Boogie Fland and the quickness of DJ Wagner. Those guys got a paint touch whenever they wanted, especially early in the second half, and they did just enough late in the game to be able to avoid a complete meltdown and blow a 13-point lead. I think it got down to 2 at one point, and St. John's missed a couple shots around the rim, but John Calipari gets the best of Rick Pitino, man. He is in the Sweet 16.
Well, I think, too, getting Kadari Richmond out of the game was huge, because that is the one guy physically that you're not going to be able to manhandle that can guard any of those dudes. And he made no impact on the second half because really he didn't play a whole lot. For me too, Rob, look at Rick Pitino. Okay, he's 72 years old. You could see it on his face when he went up to John Calipari with whatever it was, 5-8 seconds left at the end of the game, and he's talking. I think he started to kind of think of like, how many more opportunities am I going to get at this? Right? I mean, you've got St. John's, you've got him relevant. You can nod your head all you want. He's 72. He's going to be 73 years old. I understand we all have the confidence that Rick Pitino is going to have St. John's on this upward trajectory, but we don't know that with the portal. He's obviously an unbelievable coach, but this was a team that I think he felt like was magical in a lot of ways because of how they were able to win games, right? They were able to win without shooting the ball well and dominate the Big East. But now I just wonder if not the window is closed, but it's certainly closing. He might not get another opportunity to have a team like this that he felt like could have a chance to go to the Final Four.
I think he will. It's Rick Pitino, man. Like he's gonna find a way to be able to restart it. He's gonna bring who he wants to bring in. I promise you, there are going to be when he is evaluating players in the portal, there's going to be guys that can shoot. That's going to show up. He's going to be linked to names of guys that have. When you look at the stat lines under where it says 3-point percentage, the first number is going to be a 4 instead of a 2. I think that's going to be something that's pretty important for him to kind of beef up here. But I'm not as concerned about that, right? Like let's say he coaches 4 more years, right? 3 to 4 more years. Is that probably what maybe the expectation is?
Yeah, we'll give it that. Yeah, call it 3 or 4. Sure.
3 or 4 more years. I'd say that at minimum he has 2 teams that we sit here throughout the season and say, yeah, I think this team can get to a Final Four, and it's at least a discussion. So I'm not worried about that part.
This was certainly one of them. When you look at again how open it was this season, and again, if you're a St. John's fan, when you get through this and you have a chance to kind of reflect, obviously you're gonna be pissed off at a lost opportunity here. But you're also going to be happy about, hey, we were relevant again for the first time in however many years. 40 years since they won the Big East regular season title. We were actually relevant again, and there's now hope and optimism. And for Cal, man, like these Arkansas fans that frankly were worried about, did we hire a guy who was over the hill? And we said it here. Certainly back in January, like had the game passed John Calipari by. They made a late run. They played well down the stretch, well enough, especially shorthanded. Remember, they still don't have a Duke hero. Maybe their best player for the first half of the season, and he could come back now. There's a chance that he could come back for the Sweet 16, or at least that's what he told me last week as the tournament progresses. But, Cal's been on the other side of this, Rob. He's been on the side where he had a great regular season and then bowed out in the first round of the NCAA tournament to Oakland and St. Peter's at Kentucky. It eventually kind of chased him out of Lexington. Now he almost flipped it. And my question to you is, all right, which would you rather have? Which would you rather have? I think right now that's a pretty easy answer, isn't it?
Cal or Pope? Is that what you're asking? Who would I rather have?
No, I'm saying if you're John Calipari, would you rather have the great regular season and bow out to Oakland or St. Peter's, or have the mediocre regular season?
It's this. Right. It's this. 1,000% this. And here's we touched on this quite a bit yesterday, but I'm going to reiterate it here because I thought that the single biggest thing that stood out to me with this game was how hard Arkansas played. They out physical, they out toughed, they out efforted, like whatever cliche you want to put in there. They were the harder playing team today against St. John's, and I don't think that has ever happened this season. I don't think we've seen somebody play harder or play tougher or more physical than St. John's this year. And we talked about it already. We talked about it quite a bit, Jeff. Between the injuries, the slow start, the fact that this group doesn't necessarily have like a year, 2 year, 3 years worth of built up equity in terms of like chemistry equity, right? And to keep them together, and you're in March and you're playing this hard together, like it just, I think that speaks to the one thing that Cal does better than just about any other coach in college basketball. And anyone that goes back and watches that film, you're not, he didn't reinvent the wheel at all. Like that was the most basic kind of offensive sets that you could ever run. They did not run offense, and it did not matter because they had the one thing that they could figure out that worked, and they got to it. And they had two guards that could execute it, and they had big guys that hit the glass. And Billy Richmond, who had 16 today, he was terrific. Carter Knox, those guys made big shots after big shots, big plays after big plays. Carter Knox had a couple huge blocks. Jerron Brazil had some big offensive rebounds. Billy Richmond had big offensive rebounds. Big Z got in there and fouled 5 times in about 4.5 minutes. Thanks for showing up. I hope you got your cardio
DJ,
in, Big Z.
Hey, I want to bring up DJ a little bit because I've been critical of him in the past, and his decision making was terrific down the stretch today. Obviously, we know he can get to the basket and finish, but I thought he took care of the basketball. He made a couple great passes in the second half, and where he's not a true point guard, he's played that position very well over the last month or so, and it's no coincidence that's also been when Arkansas has kind of taken off here and played its best basketball. But this is one that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, including John Calipari. A hell of a win. Now they get the winner of Texas Tech and Drake out in San Francisco, and they could go. They go to the Elite Eight. They have as much talent again as almost any team in the country. Like there's a reason their payroll was probably number 1 or 2 in the entire country. They've got talent.
There's a reason why.
Go ahead.
There's a reason why they were a preseason top 15 team in America, almost consensusly, right? And I think that they can definitely beat Drake. It'll be a little bit similar to Drake playing Missouri in the sense that if they can execute their offense, then I think it'll make some sense. Sorry, I'm sweating out a Michigan 1st to 15 bet here for anyone watching. So we're getting a little tight. It's getting a little iffy there. And then Texas Tech, Chance McMillan, the news just came out. Chance McMillan is not playing today for Texas Tech. So you either get a mid-major team or you get a team whose best scorer or leading perimeter scorer may not be available. And you're John Calipari with this group, with these guys, with this talent playing this hard. Anything can happen, man. And I'll tell you this much. I think it would be we were talking about rooting for the chaos with Mike Woodson and seeing him try to get to a Final Four. I am rooting for the chaos to see John Calipari get at least to an Elite Eight and have a chance to get to a Final Four, because to see the beads of sweat forming all over your forehead, knowing that you might have to see John Calipari on the dais in the dais on the dais in San Antonio,
like rolling the dice. That's not what's going on. He's not rolling the dice. Here's what I'll say about Cal. Here's what I'll say about Cal.
The way that you hate Cal, that's the way that I hate the craps table right now. Let's just leave it at that.
I don't hate John Calipari. We just haven't had this great relationship.
I hate the craps table. I'll tell you that much.
So here's what I'll say about Cal. Here's what I'll say. He deserved the criticism the first half of the season. He deserved the criticism the first half of the season. And now it warrants the praise because he has absolutely flipped this thing, done a great job to keep these guys engaged. And I thought one of the things today, you mentioned it, obviously matching their toughness, right? Matching their physicality. You have to do that with St. John's. I thought also you're playing loose. You're a 10 seed. You've kind of been playing loose here the last couple of weeks because people have kind of written you off to some degree. And you're also playing with a shorter rotation, which helps. But they got a lot of dudes. They got a lot of good players on that team. And as long as Adu stayed on the court at the end for the final few minutes, that was underrated too. Because if they fouled Jonas Adu out at the end, I don't know who the hell was going to get a rebound.
Yep. I know who would have missed a lot of shots. That was RJ Lewis and Aaron Scott and the rest of the Johnnies. They shot 28% from the floor. Jeff, we will have much more on this game and on the day of college hoops at hand coming up midnight Eastern time, 9 p.m. Pacific, Field of 68 after dark. That's when we go